Hi, awesome fourth graders. Today we are on Unit 6, Lesson 1 in math. So this is our first fraction lesson. Woohoo! You are going to love fractions. Today we are going to learn what a unit fraction is and how to write a fraction as a sum. Ooh, when I hear the word sum, I think addition. Okay, so how to write a fraction as a sum of unit fractions. You're going to need a pencil and your math workbook. If you don't have those items, please pause this video and go and get them, and then hit play when you're ready to learn. I want to review with you before we get started that you learned in third grade that a fraction is a number that is the sum of unit fractions. Each is an equal part of a set or a whole. Okay, for example, we know that this is a fraction, and we also know that sometimes fractions are written with the fraction bar like this. It's like your division fraction bar is on its side, and then sometimes it is flat horizontally. Okay. When we say that it is the sum of unit fractions, we know that that top part of the fraction, the n, the numerator, top part of our fraction is called the numerator. That is the number of unit fractions that we have in our fraction. The bottom part of our fraction has a fancy name too. We call it the denominator. Something I tell my brain to help me remember that is denominator starts with D. It is located downstairs or on the bottom of a fraction. So the numerator is at the top of the fraction. It's the number of unit fractions. D is the denominator, the bottom number, the down number, and that's the number of equal parts. A unit fraction represents one equal part of the whole. A secret to remembering that is that a unit fraction always has a 1 in the numerator. And then again, that denominator, that bottom number is the number of parts. So if we look back up to the fraction that we started working with, 3/5. These both mean 3/5. I might have eaten 3 out of 5 pieces of a pizza. If we were to write that as a sum of unit fractions, okay, we could write that like this. My numerator is 3. That is the number of unit fractions that I'm going to have in my problem. My denominator is the total number of equal parts in my fraction, and we said that there were 5. If I were to write that as a sum of unit fractions, I could show that like this. A unit fraction has a 1 in the numerator, and the denominator stays the same. So 3/5 is like taking 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. Each of those are unit fractions. Because they have a 1 in the numerator and they represent the units that I am working with. 3/5 is the same as 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. If we look at that using our manipulatives with some of our fraction bars here, we could represent that as, here is my bar of fifths. I know that I have 5 equal parts in my whole. They're staticky. If my learning target is that I can write a fraction like 3/5 as a sum of unit fractions, I could think of it as 3/5 looks like this. I'm going to separate these out. This is 3/5. That is the same as 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. Okay, 3/5. Let's take a look at our workbooks. And if you have questions at this point, awesome, fourth graders, we are going to have an opportunity on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for you and I and a small group to meet to answer questions, to support you as you need it in math, and then challenge you if you are ready. Okay, so as you're listening to this, your job as a student is to be listening very carefully, thinking very carefully, doing your very best in your workbook. And then when we meet together, it'll be your chance to ask any questions that you have. Okay, and I promise to answer them all and to make sure that you are learning tons, okay, from each of our math lessons. Please open up your workbooks to page 251. In case by any chance you brought home both workbooks, we're in workbook 2. And you see here some of the things that I had written on the whiteboard. Okay, follow along, please, as I read this to you. We know that a unit fraction represents one equal part. Remember that one will train your brain. There's a 1 in the numerator. One equal part of a whole. A unit fraction has a numerator of 1. The unit fraction 1d is one of d equal parts. And remember from algebra, d just stands for any number. Could be halves, thirds, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up to thousands. This fraction bar is broken down into sixths because it has 6 equal parts. The other example I did was fifths because it was 5 equal parts. It says the fraction bar below is divided into 6 equal parts, or sixths. Each part is 1/6 equal parts of, or 1/6. So we have 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, all the way up to this final 1/6 to represent our 6 out of 6, or the whole. A fraction is the sum of unit fractions. Okay, remember N stands for numerator. D stands for denominator. All right, they're reminding us that the numerator is the number of unit fractions in the fraction. Denominator is the number of equal parts. To make that make sense, it's best to look at an example. Okay, the fraction 5/6, sorry, it's focusing. The fraction 5/6 is the sum of 5 1/6 unit fractions. Okay, so they broke it down for us. We have 5/6. They circled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6, 5/6. They said if we were challenged to write that as unit fractions, that would be 5 1/6. So 1/6, 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. And what that really is that numerator 5. So how many 1/6 do we have? 5 times what unit fraction? Times 5/6. We have 5 1/6 here. So 5/6 is 5 times the unit fraction 1/6. Going back to our original example, if we were to write this as a multiplication equation, we could say we have 3 times, because 3 is my numerator, 3 times what unit fraction? 1/5. There are a lot of you who probably will want to think about that the other way. I have 1/5. How many times? 1, 2, 3. I have 1/5 3 times. Remember, because of the commutative property of multiplication, you can write that either way. They mean the same thing. Come back with me, please, to workbook page 251. Our directions say to fold our fraction strips. I didn't know for sure if you would have scissors at home, so we're skipping that part of our directions. Some of you love to cross those out, so you can cross it out, but you don't have to kill the page. Okay. Write the fraction each sum represents. Okay. I'm noticing something right away. Our denominator, our bottom part of the fraction, is going to stay the same. 1/3 plus 1/3 equals, and they want the sum, so we're not going to write any multiplication here. I think addition when I see that. 1/3 plus 1/3 is how many thirds? 2/3. Let's practice writing it both ways. So we train the brain. There's more than one way to write a fraction. Number 2. My goodness, it looks big, but I'm not going to let it scare me. Okay. They want to know, when we add up all these eighths, how many eighths do we have? 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5/8. 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2/4. Sixths. 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 is 1, 2, 3, 4/6. 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12. Sound like a robot, huh? How many twelfths all together? What is the sum of all those twelfths? 6/12. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have how many twelfths in this one? 8 of them. And how many eighths? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Normally, if we were at school, I would ask you right now, do you have any questions? If you are feeling like you do, or you are confused, or maybe you noticed a mistake that I made, or you have questions about something that you see here. Again, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, each of you will have some chat time with me and a small group, and that would be a good time to ask questions. If you want to know an answer to your question before then, please email me and I will get back to you very soon. Tell me the page number you have a question on and the problem number, and I will either call you or send you a Zoom link to set up a chat right away, and we can get your question answered. A suggestion would be in your workbooks, if that's where you're working, where your question is, to circle the problem you have a question on and put a question mark, so that in an hour or whenever it might be, when we go back over it together, it's easy for you to find where your question was. Okay. So far, we know what a unit fraction is as a numerator in, a 1 in the numerator. Okay. It's the number of unit fractions in our fraction. So in this case, okay, we know that there are 5 unit fractions in this 5/8 fraction. You know that this is called the numerator and the denominator. Let's move along. Open up in your workbooks to page 253. This page is taking it one step further, and they're asking us to shade in the fraction bars to show each fraction. Then write the fraction as a sum of unit fractions and as a product of the whole number and a unit fraction. They did the first one for us. Those are loaded directions. Let's go back through. First, they want us to shade the fraction bar. Then, second, we're going to write the fraction as a sum. So we know we're going to write it as an addition equation. Then write it as a product. I think multiplication when I hear product. Then as a multiplication problem. The sample they did for this is 3/4. They wrote that as a sum of unit fractions. How many unit fractions are in 3/4? We look at the numerator. There are 3 unit fractions to make 3/4. 3/4 is equal to 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. Third part of our directions, or kind of second part of the second one, is to write that now as a multiplication problem. How many 1/4 do we have? How many times do we have the fraction 1/4? 3. 3 times 1/4. Notice that these are all equal. This is 3 different ways of writing the fraction 3/4. This means 3/4. This is equal to 3/4. And this is equal to 3/4. Let's do number 10 together. 3/8. The first part of my direction said shade the fraction bar. Did I say 3/4? I'm so sorry if I did. 3/8. 1, 2, 3. That represents 3 1/8 unit fractions out of the whole. I'm going to now write that as a sum of unit fractions. 3/8. How many 1/8 do I have? The numerator says 3, so I have 3 of those. Then I'm going to write that as a product of a whole number. I have 1/8. How many times? 3. 3 times the unit fraction 1/8. Do number 11 together. 5/5. Whoa, shade them in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, check that out, please. Mathematicians, what do you notice there? Hopefully you are noticing that we shaded in the whole bar. 5 out of 5 is actually a whole, isn't it? One whole. So I'm noticing that any fraction where the numerator and the denominator is the same, it is the whole. That's true of all fractions. Here's another one whole fraction. If I ate 4 out of 4 pieces of pizza, I'd be very satisfied and full. I would have eaten one whole of the pizza. There is nothing left. We'll talk more about that in an upcoming unit. Back to our directions. We need to write 5/5 as a sum of unit fractions. I know the 5 in the numerator tells me I have the fraction 1/5 5 times. I'm adding it, repeated addition. Let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5/5 is 1/5 5 times. I'm going to now write that as a product of a whole number. I have 5 1/5 fraction bars, which then we know equals a whole. You don't have to write that, but I know a lot of you are making that conclusion right now. The next part of math involves you going to your email and looking for directions, excuse me, on how to log in to a website called Learn Zillion. There is another learning video for you to watch when you get there. After you have finished that video, please open up again to this workbook page, page 253, and give these last 3 problems a try on your own. During our first small group math chat, we will go over these 3 and make sure you are doing extremely well and ready to move on. Thank you for being awesome listeners. Thank you for working hard and having a good attitude. I miss you all lots. If you feel you need to listen to this video again, or if right now you're thinking, I have no idea what she just said, one of the cool parts about this is you could replay this video as many times as you need to. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you and talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.